bloodiest war on American soil. States versus states. Brothers versus brothers. Join hosts Bang and Dang as they take you battle by battle through the most divisive time in American history. Welcome to Battles of the American Civil War.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War, which I was Bang and Dang. We're almost out of October. Actually, we are out of October. No, we're going to finish up October as well as, well, today's episode is going to be literally all of the Price's Missouri raid. And you're going to see him get his ass whooped in all of every single battle that we do here. We got the last four. Well, there's 5 more battles left. We got 4 of the last 5. The other one's not for like a week or 2. But yeah, these are pretty much all continuations of the ones we did last episode as well. So they're still retreating and getting his army kicked in, losing men for no reason. Just leave, man.
Democrats are getting their ass whooped.
Hey, wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, they're going to retaliate, though, really bad, like they did the other day.
Right. With that being said, go check out our YouTube at Bang Dang Network. Get all the descriptions in the profile. You get all the links in the description. Go check out our Dark channel. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, give us a review, share with your friends. Hey, we got the Battle of Westport, Murray, Desenia, Mine Creek, Marmiton River, all pretty much one battle, but not. First up, Battle of Westport. And if you didn't listen last week, we're going to go through a little bit of the background of the Missouri raid real quick for you, which is the Battle of Westport, though. The biggest of them is considered by some to be the Gettysburg of the West, which was October 23rd, 1864. Westport, which is now a part of Kansas City, Missouri, had already established its place in history by the time Union and Confederate forces clashed there in 1864. John Calvin McCoy, known as the father of Kansas City, had laid out the town, and pioneers traveling along the Oregon, California, and Santa Fe trails all passed through it on their way west. Oh, nice. Westport gradually replaced nearby Independence as the as the jumping off point for the westward trails, contributing to the growth of the town.
Why wouldn't they?
Right. Remember, Oregon Trail game, you had to start in Independence.
Yep. Or was it?
Yep.
Okay. They got a new one out.
Yes, I have it.
I was going to get it, but
it's decent. Actually, I beat it. First time and one of the few times I've ever made it successfully. Made it with one guy, but I did it.
Yeah, that's why it ain't.
You can kick people off and shit, though.
It ain't as hard as the.
Well, they have the classic version and then an updated version.
Did you beat the classic version?
No, I beat the updated version. But you can if people get too fucking stupid for you, you can kick them off and get out of here. Or if then they'll try to come back later and you can accept them or fucking make them go on their own way and shit. It's hilarious.
All right. They let you go out hunting like they did before?
Of course.
Nice. Is it still 2D?
No. Well, kind of 2D, but better.
Oh, all right.
A little bit.
2D with the 3D?
2.5D.
All right. The town of Kansas, also known today as Kansas City, during the Civil War served as headquarters for the Federal District of the Border and was garrisoned by a sizable contingent of the Union troops. While its own municipal star was beginning to fade in favor of its northern neighbor, Westport was still of some importance in the region. As it turned out, however, the decision to fight here would be the result of a chain of events that had little to do with any strategic importance attached to the town itself. I think this one or the last one? Where were we at last week? Was it still Price's raid or those other guys?
Yep, Price.
Yeah, nothing was ever meant to be what it was supposed to be. That last battle wasn't never supposed to be what it was, and it did. What one was that? It was Little Blue River, I believe it was. One of those ones. Byram's Ford, maybe.
Well, because they're chasing the Confederates.
And shit's happening that they don't want to happen, and it makes no sense, or it didn't help or not help the war anyway.
Well, the thing of Sterling Price's, well, we'll get into it, but obviously the whole thing of him is to take pressure off the East. Didn't work.
No.
September 1864, Sterling Price led his army of Missouri into Missouri with the hope of capturing the state for the South and turning the northern people against Abe Lincoln with the upcoming presidential election. Major General William Rosecrans, commanding the Federal Department of the Missouri, began assembling troops to repel the invasion. Rosecrans' cavalry under Major General Alfred Pleasanton set out in pursuit of Price's force, accompanied by a large detachment of infantry from the Army of Tennessee under Andrew J. Smith.
Well, after his defeat at the Battle of Fort Davidson, Price, he realized that St. Louis, way too far heavily fortified for his rather small force of 12,000 men. So he was like, guess what? We're going west. We're going to go threaten Jefferson City. They're a little bit smaller. After light skirmishing there, Price again decided that his target was also too heavily fortified, and he moved further west toward Fort Leavenworth.
He got faulty information, and it wasn't as fortified as he thought. He could have taken it, probably.
Yep, exactly what it was, as we've seen so many times. And usually it was on the Union side making that call. They got the whole rebel army over there. Right. No, it was just a garrison of about 700 men.
There was 3 people.
Right. So he marched on. Disease and desertion coupled with battlefield losses whittled Price's force down to about 8,500 men after he just making failed attempt after failed attempt after failed attempt.
Major General Samuel Curtis, commander of the Federal Department of Kansas, now faced the threat of Price's army moving into his department after learning of Confederate movements from spies, which included Wild Bill Hickok on these.
Look at that shit, supposedly.
Curtis accordingly assembled his troops into a force that he named the Army of the Border. James G. Blunt, yo, beautiful, was recalled from Indian campaigns to lead its 1st Division, composed mostly of volunteer regiments and some Kansas militia. Curtis was only initially able to muster about 4,000 volunteers, and then he asked Kansas Governor Thomas Kearney to call out the state militia to bolster his forces.
All right.
Well, come on, Kearney.
Well, Governor Kearney was like, I kind of suspect that Curtis, he's attempting to draw the militia away from their voting districts as election time was nearing.
They only fuck politics, dude.
Right.
Seriously.
That's all it was. That's what, like I said, this war should have been over in 1862.
Ridiculous.
Kearney was unconcerned with Price's force
Ferrari away.
Kearney was unconcerned with Price's force far away in Missouri, and he felt it posed no threat to Kansas whatsoever, which it didn't. However, once Price had turned west toward Jefferson City, Kearney relented, and Major General George Deitzler, he took command of a division, it was the Kansas militia, that now joined Curtis's Army of the Border. Kearney was overreacting.
Kearney was acting like a Kearney. Right. By order of Major General Blunt, under General Field Orders No. 2, the militia regiments of William H.M. Fishbeck, Brigadier General of Militia, were placed under the command of Charles W. Blair, who was Colonel of the Volunteers. Fishbeck was infuriated that his command had been subordinated to a volunteer officer. Since Kansas law stated that militia should be kept under the command of militia officers, Fishbeck disregarded Blunt's order.
Oh, wow.
Blunt had Fishbeck arrested and held until he was released by order of Major General Curtis. Upon release, Fishbeck resumed command of the Kansas militia regiments with orders to obey directives that came from Major General Blunt, though. He said, you'll get out, but Blunt's your guy, man.
Well, they've probably seen this. He was like, he has a point here. But
I mean, it is state law.
So, I mean, it wasn't the Union Army. It was the militia.
Right.
Well, this arrangement had Brigadier General Fishbeck in direct command of the militia units attached to the 3rd Brigade, 1st Division, and Colonel Charles Blair in overall command of the brigade itself.
But didn't really control anything the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Division did.
Right. Historians have described the arrangement as a brigade within a brigade.
Right. Why didn't they just make them separate?
Right. Blair and Fishbeck, they led the militia into action at Westport, which was accompanied on the field by Major General George Deitzler as well. They then, in the subsequent pursuit of Price, Major General Curtis ordered the militia to return home.
Good for them.
Well, I guess he really didn't need them.
General Curtis sent the bulk of his 1st Division under General James Blunt to confront the Confederates at Lexington, approximately 40 miles east of Kansas City, October 19th. Blunt was unable to stop Price, but did slow his progress and gathered information on the Confederate forces. Again, at the Little Blue River, October 21st, Blunt was forced to retire, but not without slowing Price enough for a pursuing Federal Cavalry Division, which was under Alfred Pleasanton, to close the gap between himself and the rebels.
Right.
Well, slow him down until you can get to him, I guess.
Here we go. Additional fighting occurred the next day at Independence. Price emerging victorious yet again. Curtis was nearly 60 years old at this time, and age has taken a toll on his desire for combat.
He's like, I'm fucking too old for this shit.
Oh, 60 years old back then, shit. However, thanks to his aggressive subordinate, General Blunt, Curtis decided to make another stand south of Westport. Blunt, he personally oversaw the construction of a defensive line south of town along Brush Creek. This was perpendicular to the Kansas state line. Okay, here we go.
Price was aware of the forces to his front and rear, which together outnumbered him nearly 3-1. So he determined to deal with them one at a time. He decided to attack Curtis's army first at Westport. Almost as old as his adversary, Price left direction of his engagement to his subordinate General Joe Shelby. With about 500 wagons and 5,000 head of cattle, Price first needed a ford for supply trains to cross the Blue River near Westport. One of Price's divisions under John Marmaduke accordingly forced the crossing at Byram's Ford, the 22nd, then took up positions on the west bank to hold off Pleasanton's Federal cavalry, which by now threatened Price's rear. Two other Confederate divisions under Shelby and James Fagan were poised to assault Blunt along Brush Creek the next day, hoping to defeat him before Pleasanton could arrive on the field in force. Sorry, guys.
Wow. Well, Blunt, anticipating Price's impending attack, he had positioned his 3 available brigades along the Brush Creek, while a 4th under Colonel Charles Blair was en route from Kansas City, east of Warrenall Lane, which is present-day Warrenall Road. Oh, that's cool. Was the brigade of J. Hobart Ford. West of Warrenall was the brigade of Charles Doc Jennison, with an artillery battery in support. 2 regiments of cavalry filled the gap to the west between Jennison and the Kansas-Missouri state line. As a right angle to Jennison was the brigade of Thomas Moonlight, running parallel to that state line. Moonlight, he was positioned to either support Jennison or move against Confederate flank. Oh, look at that shit, dude. Price is fucked.
Yep, daybreak 23rd. Blunt opened the battle by sending Jennison and Ford over an icy brush Creek with their skirmishers.
Nice.
Advancing up a ridge, the Union forces engaged the Confederates in an open field to the south. The rebel divisions of Joseph Shelby and James Fagan had meanwhile received orders from Price to hold Curtis in front of Westport. Shelby counterattacked with his Iron Brigade under M. Jeff Thompson in the lead.
Uh-oh. Here we go. The attack drove the outflanked Federales back across the creek. Oh. Moonlight's brigade hit so hard that it was forced to fall back to the high ground on Brush Creek's west bluff into what is now Westwood, Kansas, while Jennison's brigade retreated almost to the streets of Westport. It has appeared that at this point the old rebels might carry the day.
Same thing happened at Cedar Creek, I believe.
Sure it was, but guess what, boys? It was not to be. Shelby's force was out of ammo and remained on the heights south of Brush Creek.
Also at this crucial hour, Colonel Blair's brigade arrived, and Curtis heard Pleasanton's gun engaging the Confederates at nearby Byram's Ford.
Yes.
His spirits lifted. The Union commander rode to the front lines and personally directed Blair's troops into the battle west of Jennison. The reinforced Federals charged across the creek once more with Blair in the lead, but were again repulsed and retreated to the north bank.
Oh, shit. All right. Damn. Well, I gotta give it to the old Rebs, man.
I guess.
Needed another option besides frontal assaults. Curtis, he decided to search for a weak point. He was like, maybe there's a weak point over there. You gotta find
That's the thing about these Unions, man. They're never good at frontal assaults, literally.
No. So he's looking for a weak point in the old rebel line. His scouts found a local farmer named George Thoman, who was eager to help the old Federals, as the Confederates had stolen his horse the previous night. Thoman, he showed Curtis a gulch cut by Swan Creek, running up to rise along Shelby's left flank. Uh-oh. Curtis, he personally directed his headquarters escort and the 9th Wisconsin Battery through this gully. He's like, here we go. This is it, boys.
Meanwhile, Blunt continued to push Jennison and Ford up the rise across Brush Creek, making slow progress until the 9th Wisconsin opened fire upon the Confederate flank and rear. Encouraged, Blunt's men now poured over the ridge, but Shelby's men fought back stubbornly, and a seesaw battle ensued in the open prairie, back and forth. The Union Army gradually gained the upper hand, slowly pushing Shelby's brigades back to the Warrenall House.
Uh-oh, here we go. As disaster was befalling Shelby and Fagan, a similar fate was happening to Price's rear guard.
It's all falling down.
And this was under Marmaduke at Byram's Ford. A division of Price's army under General Shelby had forced a crossing at the ford on the 22nd, which is the day prior. This forced the old Bluecoats defenders there to retire to Westport. Shelby's colleague, General Marmaduke, he established his own defensive line on the west bank of the river. He did that to hold off Pleasanton's cavalry, which was pressing them hard from the east. If Pleasanton could now force his way across the Blue River, he would be in position to threaten Price's army, as well as his supplies. Uh-oh.
Marmaduke's division was attacked by 3 of Pleasanton's brigades starting at 8 o'clock in the morning of the 23rd. The Confederates initially managed to hold their own.
Oh.
One of the Union brigade commanders, Brigadier General Egbert B. Brown stalled his attack and was placed under arrest by Pleasanton for disobeying orders.
That's right.
Another of Pleasanton's brigade commanders, Colonel Edward Winslow, was wounded and succeeded by Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Benteen, who would later ride to fame at Little Bighorn.
Oh, shit.
Despite these setbacks, Federal troopers gained the West Bank by 11 a.m. and Marmaduke retired.
Look at that. Knew that was happening. As Brown's brigade, now led by John F. Phillips, forded the river. They came under heavy fire from Marmaduke's artillery. Once they crossed that river, they charged Marmaduke across an open field. During this charge, Union troops from Missouri and Arkansas, they battled Rebs from these same two states. Marmaduke forced back, rejoining Shelby and Fagan. Blunt, he pounded the shit out of the now consolidated Confederate remnants with his own cannon.
Jeez. While the main Confederate army was now being hit hard on two sides, Pleasanton's 4th Brigade under Brigadier General John McNeil moved against the rebel brigade, which was under William Lewis Cabell, guarding a second ford near Hickman Mills. McNeil's brigade was able to drive the Confederates from the ford and across the river.
Hey.
Federal columns were now converging on Price from 3 different directions.
Holy shit.
Price, it's all over, bud. Just go.
The old Rebs pulled back to their last line of defense along the road south of Forest Hill, present-day Gregory Boulevard. They did that with Colonel Jennison leading the pursuit for the old Union. By now, 30 Union guns had been brought to bear against the lone remaining Confederate cannon.
Oh, jeez.
One Federal battery had just unlimbered when Colonel James McGee's Arkansas cavalry charged down Warnall's Lane in an attempt to capture it. Captain Curtis Johnson of the 15th Kansas Cavalry saw the old rebel attack forming and immediately moved to intercept. Johnson and McGee personally engaged each other with their revolvers.
Oh, these motherfuckers.
Both commanders badly wounded, but they both survived. The fight continued to rage until the old blue coach reinforcements secured the battery once again.
Jeez, when was the last time you seen 2 leaders of the regiments or whatever fighting each other?
Don't happen very often.
That's how that should have been ended.
The battle?
Grant and Lee duking it out in a fist fight.
Well, Grant beat the shit out of Lee.
You don't know that. Lee was a stubborn old
Right.
general, man.
Grant was probably drunk.
Shelby sent a brigade under Colonel Sidney Jackman to secure his wagon trains, but these had already been removed by order of General Price. Jackman was instead intercepted by General Fagan, who alerted him to the mass cavalry of Union, which just had crossed the Big Blue River to the east. Seeing Pleasanton's close proximity to the Confederate flank and rear, General Curtis had ordered a general advance of the entire Union line, with Blair's and Jennison's brigade leading the charge.
Okay.
Shelby, meanwhile, had only Thompson's Iron Brigade to hold off this massive assault.
Uh-oh.
When one of Pleasanton's batteries arrived in support of Curtis's men, Thompson's Confederates finally broke and fled. They said, "Fuck you!
We're out." So this is enough.
No need for this."
This is enough. Price's men set fire to prairie grass in the area to create a smoke screen to cover their withdrawal.
Good for you guys.
Witnesses, they reported that the road was strewn with debris from the fleeing rebel army. The next day, Blunt and Pleasanton took up their pursuit of Price's remaining forces. They would chase Price through Kansas and southern Missouri, engaging him at Marais de Cygne, Mine Creek, the Marmiton River as well, and then finally at Newtonia, forcing Price to withdraw into Indian Territory. Ooh-wee! From which he eventually returned to Arkansas via Texas, and ultimately leaving the old rebel leader with less than 6,000 survivors from his initial force of 12,000, half his men. And his campaign officially ended on November 1st, 1864.
Jeez,
He
the
got out
battle,
early.
Like we said earlier, the Battle of Westport, one of the largest battles west of the Mississippi, over 30,000 troops involved. Union victory put an end to Price's campaign for Missouri, and the battle was accordingly been referred to as Gettysburg of the West. Curtis wrote to Henry Halleck after the battle that the victory at Westport was most decisive. This greatly contested border state was now firmly under Union control and would remain so forever.
Yeah.
For forever.
Until 2025. According to a recent book on Price's campaign, Cal S. Sinnese's The Last Hurrah, Sterling Price's Missouri Expedition of 1864.
How come we didn't hear about this guy in the beginning of this show, and now he's everywhere these last few episodes?
Historians have long exaggerated the casualties inflicted in the fighting around Westport on the 21st to the 23rd of October, supposedly.
And this guy's always the one that's like, no, this shit's not even right. This is what really happened.
Right. Well, Kyle, he says, no, that the Union forces lost 361, and the Confederates lost 510, killed, wounded, or captured on the 23rd. However, most sources give the total casualties as 3,000 men, about 1,500 Union, 1,500 Confederate, which is probably more accurate. Another primary source gives an estimate of 400 casualties for the Union and 1,000 to 1,500 for the Confederate.
Okay. Well, there's people died. All right, some people died.
Right. Some people did things.
Several participants in the battle later went on to gain national fame in other ways, many of them in the American Old West. Buffalo Bill Cody served as a private in the 7th Kansas Cavalry.
Sure did.
Which is part of Jennison's Jayhawkers. Wild Bill Hickok, we already know he served as a scout for General Curtis. Frederick Benteen, who assumed command of a brigade at Byram's Ford, would subsequently fight with George Custer at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Ooh, he got out, though.
Right. Mountain Man John Liver Eaton Johnson, on whose life the movie Jeremiah Johnson was made.
No shit.
He enlisted in the U.S. Navy before the war, and on February 24th, 1864, joined Company A, 3rd Regiment, Colorado Cavalry Volunteers from Depot in St. Louis.
Okay.
With that regiment, he fought for the Union in the Battle of Westport.
Fantastic.
I don't know who John Liver Eaton Johnson is.
No, I don't, but Jeremiah
He's
Johnson.
a mountain man, I guess.
Right. No shit. Wow. 3 Union officers at Westport later served as post-war state governors. You got Samuel J. Crawford, governor of Kansas. John Laurie Beveridge became governor of Illinois. And Thomas Theodore Crittenden, he became governor of Missouri and was later buried in Forest Hill Cemetery. Scene of the fighting during Price's retreat from Westport. Nice. That's where that's at. Nice. Serving in the Kansas militia during the battle was Kansas State Treasurer David Heffelbauer. No shit. Treasurer, huh? Good for him. He helped found People's Party in Kansas and was a leader in the Greenback and later Union Labor Party. So this guy. Senators Jim Lane and Samuel C. Pomeroy. They served on Curtis's staff, while future United States Senator Preston Plum and Edmund Ross, they served as federal officers. Well, that's cool. Look at that. I mean, of course you're going to have.
Right. Former Lieutenant Governors Thomas C. Reynolds joined General Price's staff in hopes that Price's army might capture Jefferson City and install him as the governor of a Confederate regime in Missouri. Price had served as pre-war governor, while Marmaduke later served as post-war governor of Missouri. How the fuck?
Dude, people don't realize this war was just 50 years after War of 1812.
Right.
And with a bunch of nobodies still running the country. Bunch of youngins.
50 years before World War I. What's your point?
It's true. Damn, America's in a lot of wars.
Yeah, I mean, they've never been a year that there has been.
Wow. Although many signs and plaques commemorate some aspect of the Battle of Westport are still present throughout Kansas City today. The main battle, maybe not today, we don't know.
Right.
The main battle monument is located in the Sunset Hill neighborhood, just south of the Country Club Plaza. So if you guys want to check that out, if you're in that little area of Westport, go to Sunset Hill neighborhood and Country Club Plaza. Because the center of the main battlefield comprises present-day Luce Park and a portion of the upper Warrenell campus of the Pembroke High School. Oh, that's cool. The memorial is at the southern end.
Pembroke Hill School.
Right. Oh. Same thing, right?
Probably not. Sounds like a college.
Right. The memorial is at the southern end of Luce Park along West 55th Street. So there you go, guys.
Okay. Battle of Westport Museum and Visitor Center, located in Swope Park, depicts the experiences of the soldiers and civilians during the 3 days battle. A Battle of Westport drive-in tour starts at Westport at Kelly's Westport Inn, which is the oldest standing building in Kansas City, Missouri. Oh, nice. It consists of a series of placards, one at each stop, giving both a detailed history of what occurred there and directions to the next stop.
Okay.
Stops along the self-guided tour include the Warrenell House, which served as hospital during the battle, and the Forest Hill Cemetery, which we know. Joseph Shelby was also buried there.
No.
Many men of his Iron Brigade as well.
No.
The Trailside Center Museum in Kansas City has several exhibits and research material related to the battle as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Looks like a good little stop there. Check that out. The first step toward memorializing the Battle of Westport, it came early in the 20th century, 1906. Local historian Paul Jenkins, he published his Battle of Westport, while Byram's Ford engagement was reenacted in Swope Park in 1912. During 1920, civil leaders under H.H. Crittenden of the Missouri Valley Historical Society.
H.H. Crittenden, is that any relation to Thomas Crittenden?
Right. They conceived a plan to save the Westport battles sites near present-day Luce Park and Byram's Ford. Crittenden's father was Colonel Thomas Crittenden.
Could have just waited.
Who led one of the Union cavalry brigades at Byram's Ford battle. and later served as governor of Missouri.
He sure did. The mayor and council of Kansas City passed ordinances recognizing these sites. This was followed by the introduction of a bill in 1924 in the U.S. Congress to create a national military park. This endeavor proved unsuccessful, and memorial efforts ceased for several years. During the 50s, much of the battlefield was disturbed by commercial and industrial construction, though the developer of one industrial complex did erect a memorial, near the historic route of Byram's Ford Road.
All right.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? On the eve of the Civil War centennial in 1958, for some reason, the Civil War Roundtable of Kansas City, it was formed with former President Harry S. Truman. He was a charter member.
Good for you, buddy.
Dr. Howard Monet, a member of his roundtable, he researched, spoke, and wrote extensively about what he termed the action before Westport. His book of that title was published in 1964 for the battle centennial. Dr. Monet, his enthusiasm led to the eventual creation of an automobile tour of the widely dispersed battle sites. Oh, that's cool. Is it still around today?
All right.
Probably not.
All right. That's going to lead us through the Battle of Marais de Seine, which took place literally the very next day in Lynn County, Kansas. Around 1 o'clock the next morning of Westport, Curtis was informed that Brigadier General John Sanborn had disengaged. Wishing to continue to press Price, he ordered Sanborn to attack. He said, he ain't disengaging. Curtis had some of his staff officers assist Sanborn, who had been at least partially stymied by lack of staff assistance. An artillery battery was deployed at this time. Around 2 a.m., Fagan and Shelby withdrew their troops, and Marmaduke aligned his division to serve as a rear guard. It was over 2,000 strong.
Here we go. Marmaduke, he withdrew his main force south of the river, but left a skirmish line on a pair of mounds about 140 feet tall. During that very night,
140 foot? That's more than a mound, my guy.
Yeah, right. During the very night.
During
this very night, part of the 2nd Colorado Cavalry broke through the old rebel skirmish line.
To the other side.
And then they withdrew again. Missouri State Militia Unit and the 4th Iowa Cavalry also advanced under cover of darkness. During the night, Sanborn, reinforced by elements of Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Bentine's cavalry brigades. Look at that shit.
One of Bentine's regiments was detached to guard a river crossing to the north to prevent Confederate flanking attack. 4 a.m., Sanborn's artillery, 6 3-inch ordnance rifles, opened fire on the Confederate line. At daybreak, the 4th Iowa Cavalry on the Union right attacked, using the broken ground as cover. Union artillery fired on the mounds, but despite aiming at a 15-degree elevation, overshot the elevated Confederate positions. Well, aim down then.
All right.
Some of the missiles struck the Confederate camp, though, accelerating its evacuation. They said, let's get the fuck out of here.
Confederate marksmanship at the portion of the line was very poor, and the Iowans easily took the position, which consisted of one of the mounds.
Okay.
The 6th and the 8th Missouri State Militia Cavalry regiments, they attacked on the other end of the line. Again, the fire from the Confederate defenders was ineffective. Both sides were hampered by the rough terrain, though. The Confederate commander, facing 2 militia cavalry regiments, feared being isolated from Marmaduke's main body on the other side of the river, so the mound was abandoned.
Yep.
Got to go. The retreat was not detected until after the position had been completely abandoned. Oh, shit.
Jeez. Here we go with historian Kyle Sinisi again. He wrote that casualties during... you little Sinisi boy. He wrote that casualties during this stage of the fighting appeared to have been almost non-existent. With Confederate resistance north of the river broken, Sanborn deployed the 3rd Iowa Cavalry Regiment and the 10th Missouri Cavalry Regiment, as well as the 2nd Arkansas Cavalry Regiment, to exploit the breakthrough. 2nd Arkansas Cavalry spearheaded the pursuit. The Union forces captured 100 Confederate soldiers, as well as 2 cannons, some wagons, which was north of the river, which included around the trading post settlement.
Large quantities of equipment, personal effects, partially cooked food were found left in the camp, including the partially butchered carcasses of livestock.
Interrupted him, man.
Damn, Marmaduke had positioned men and 3 cannons from Heinsohn's Texas battery just south of the river crossing, and these Union troops were temporarily halted, though. There were not enough bluecoats on the field to challenge the old Reb line directly. The river crossing was obstructed with 2 downed trees, and some men from the from Colonel Thomas Freeman's command as well. It's chilling there.
Sanborn then ordered the 7th Provisional Enrolled Missouri Militia to cross the river upstream from the Confederate position, successfully outflanking the Confederate line and opening a path across the river. as a 7th Provisional Enrolled Militia from Missouri cleared the approach from the flank. The 2nd Arkansas also drove across the river. Tributary of the Marie de Seigneur, named Big Sugar Creek, presented another challenge to the crossing. An alternate crossing bypassed this roadblock, but Sanborn was not aware of his existence.
Uh-oh.
That's why you got to have guys there.
Right.
Man. Where's your engineers?
Well, serving as a rear guard, Brigadier General John Clark aligned his brigade in the path of the Union advance. This line was spotted by Sanborn's men after they forced their way through some forest growth under the river.
Or around the river. Like, damn, we just found a whole damn forest under the river, guys.
Right, around the river. Sanborn, he drew up a line with 2 provisional enrolled Missouri militia units thrown out as skirmishers. The 2nd Arkansas Cavalry, the 2nd Colorado Cavalry, and 2 additional militia units forming his main line. Confused as what to do, Sanborn, he left to personally find Curtis for orders. And he left that Colonel John Phelps, he UB commander of the 2nd Arkansas Cavalry, in charge in his absence.
No.
What?
Phelps was already commander of the 2nd Arkansas Cavalry. He said, you be in charge while I'm gone.
Right, he'd be in charge of this whole thing. Wow.
Phelps' orders were not to attack unless reinforced, but he assaulted Clark's line with 200 men from his own unit and the 2 Missouri militia commands anyway. The attack was initially successful but halted and was repulsed. Curtis and Pleasanton had joined Sanborn by this point and observed the 2nd Arkansas's repulse. They attempted to bring more troops to Phelps' support, but Price's wagons had cut up the roads during their retreat, making maneuvers difficult.
By 9 a.m., Pleasanton, who had regained command of his division from Sanborn, formed a line with the cavalry brigade commanded by Sanborn, Benteen, and Colonel John Phillips. A small unit of Union artillery also joined this very line. Sanborn's command outflanked the right of Clark's line and forced the old Rebs to withdraw. Another rebel cannon was captured. That's when Hanson's battery abandoned it during the retreat.
Wow.
Clark's brigade formed a new line containing about 1,200 men, but the weight of 3,500 Union troopers now present was too much for the old rebels.
Jeez. After Phillips's troops threatened his left, Clark ordered a retreat from the field around 10 a.m. Colonel Colton Green and his 3rd Missouri Cavalry Regiment provided a rear guard for the Confederates. Over 937 acres of the battlefield are preserved by government agencies, 150 by the Kansas Department of Fish and Wildlife, 787.25 acres by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and the land under the control of the latter agency is within the Marie de Seigneur's Wildlife Refuge.
As of 2010, 92% of the battlefield retains historical integrity.
Oh, wow.
Only 19% is included in the Wildlife Refuge, though. Since the land is preserved as a wildlife site instead of a historic site, the only public interpretation of the battle is some signage and some trails that are present at a rest stop maintained by the Kansas Department of Transportation. Yeah, it's a wildlife refuge, dude. Yeah. Wow. United States Route 69 and Kansas State Highway 52, it runs through the northern portion of this battlefield, although the landscape is generally free from major development. Well, as of January 2021, the site of the battlefield is not listed on the National Register of Historic Places, although a 2010 survey performed by the American Battlefield Protection Program determined that it is likely eligible for listing.
Why would it be?
It probably is. They just haven't done it.
Probably. All right, brings us to the very next day at the Battle of Mine Creek, October 25th in Lynn County, Kansas. Despite the skirmish near the Marais des Cygnes, Price did not believe his force was in substantial danger and sent Shelby's division towards Fort Scott to make an attempt at capturing the post. Why are you doing this? Marmaduke and Fagan remained with some of the wagon train near the crossing of Mine Creek north of the Little Osage River. Osage? Sure. The crossing of Mine Creek was not easily navigated and a pileup soon formed. Confederates decided to make a stand north of the creek and attempt to protect the wagons.
Got to protect those wagons. Old Fagan and old Marmaduke, they formed an 800 yards long line. With
Not very long.
Fagan on the left, Marmaduke on the old right. 4 cannons positioned in the center of the line. 2 more posted on each flank. Confederate line was defended by an estimated 7,000 men. Some of the leading Union troops caught up with the Confederate column. However, Blunt's division, he was lagging. He would not arrive in time for the battle.
Phillips, isn't this the same guy that put somebody on trial or whatever for not doing what he was supposed to do?
Could have been. Phillips's brigade reached the field first, and a long-range fight began.
Confederates used their artillery. Phillips's force lacked artillery and was forced to be contented with long-range fire from repeating rifles.
That'd work.
Cabell entertained the thought of attacking Phillips with his brigade of Confederates, but decided against a charge due to the disorganization of the Confederate line and the arrival of Benteen's Union Brigade.
You can't do a charge when the other guys have repeating rifles.
Right.
I'm sorry. You can't do it.
Combined, Phillips and Benteen's brigades number about 2,500 to, maybe 2,600.
Oh, wow.
Despite being outnumbered, the Union commanders decided to attack the Confederate line. They're weak right now. Man.
Yep. One of the driving factors behind the decision to attack was Benteen's belief that the old Rebs had made an error in emplacement of their artillery.
Ooh, they're going to shoot right over them.
Right. The Confederate cannons were placed close to the front line and would only have the chance to fire 1 or 2 rounds before a cavalry charge could reach them.
That's why you got to go behind your men, man.
Yep. The Union charge was made while the cavalrymen were still mounting. The Confederates' forces were also on horseback as well. Oh. Nice.
Okay. Union attack faltered during the middle of the charge when both the 10th Missouri Cavalry of Benteen's brigade and Phillips's brigade stopped the attack before reaching the Confederate line. Why? 10th Missouri had met heavy small arms fire from the Confederate lines, stopped under the fire, and Phillips halted his brigade to keep in line with Benteen.
Well, just think, you had 7,000 soldiers sitting there with loaded muskets waiting fire while they're doing their artillery bombardment. So they see these guys coming down, dude, and you got 7,000 bullets at you instantly. And then you got another 45 seconds before they can load again. But then they got their little...
they got the repeaters.
Little repeaters and just...
Yeah, but you're running to try to charge.
Right.
Well, either or, this left the Union cavalrymen stationary and vulnerable to counterattack.
Oh, shit. The old Rebs were too disorganized to even attempt a counterattack. And the 4th Iowa Cavalry of Benteen's brigade broke the impasse by renewing the attack. The 3rd Iowa Cavalry followed the 4th. And eventually the whole Benteen's brigade rejoined the charge. Benteen's force, well, aimed for the center of Marmaduke's side of the Confederate line. And Phillips's brigade, well, he went to Fagan's left flank once the unit resumed forward progress.
Once Benteen and Phillips reached the main Confederate line, the position did not hold long. Union troopers' repeating rifles gave them a firepower advantage over the Confederates, who were mostly armed with single-shot weapons.
Yep.
Clark's Confederate brigade became engaged in a melee and quickly fell back. Marmaduke's other brigade, which was Freeman's, contained mainly newly recruited men, and they fell back before the Union charge completely reached their line.
Right, they're smart.
Not having none of this.
Mm-hmm. Damn. Well, after Clark and Freeman fell back, the position of Cabell's Confederate brigade became exposed, and it too retreated. Soon, almost the entire rebel line was in retreat towards the crossing of Mine Creek. Unable to cross the creek, many of the old rebel soldiers were captured. One of the prisoners was Marmaduke himself.
Yeah.
The old rebel general was captured by Private James Dunleavy of the 3rd Iowa. Oh, that dude's a hero. Well, kinda. As a reward for capturing Marmaduke, Dunleavy was given military leave for the remainder of his time served.
He said, "You go home now, boy. You done your service."
That's fantastic, huh? Nowadays, it puts you in the front line again. Dunleavy later received the Medal of Honor for the gallantry in capturing General McDuke.
Scrooge McDuke.
Rebel Tales. Woo! Damn. Dunleavy later received the Medal of Honor for gallantry in capturing General Marmaduke. Cabell, he was also made a prisoner, and the Union troops captured either 8 or 10 cannons.
So you got Cabell and Marmaduke gone. Phillips and Benteen's brigade crossed the ford and continued pursuing the Confederates. Confusion began to overtake the field, partially because many of the Confederates are wearing captured Union uniforms.
Oh, that's nice.
Fagan attempted to rally his forces into a line capable of halting the Union pursuit, but the attempt failed.
Uh-oh.
Pleasanton and Curtis then arrived on the field late in the fighting, and the battle ended when Pleasanton ordered Benteen and Phillips to stop.
Yep.
They just let them run. We got them.
Go. Rebel casualties estimated 1,200. Union 100 to 110.
I don't know. Should we consult Sinisi on this?
Sinisi. That's ridiculous when Confederates had 7,000 guys and these guys had like 2,500.
Right.
That's sad.
Well, repeaters.
Those
Well,
repeaters.
those captured too.
Right. Shelby, his division returned in time to provide a rear guard for the defeated Confederates. Price's surviving wagons would again be delayed late on the 25th, this time at the crossing of Marmiton River.
Yup.
After a short fight at the Battle of Marmiton River, old Price, he decided to destroy all the wagons that did not contain essential military supplies.
So why are you bringing them anyways?
So stupid. If you're going to do it in the first place, you just ruined everything.
The site of the battle was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1973, that is.
Nice.
As the Battle of Mine Creek site. At the time of the listing, the site was considered to be in good condition, although the prairie has been converted in cultivated agricultural land. A pond has been constructed, and the number of trees on the site has increased.
That's fine.
Kansas Historical Society has also preserved the site as Mine Creek Battlefield State Historic Site. The site was officially founded in 1974.
Fantastic.
Marked trails are present at the site, allowing visitors to view the significant features of the battlefield.
Okay.
A visitor center has also been constructed.
Look at that shit.
As of 2019, the American Battlefield Trust and its partners have acquired and preserved 326 acres of that battlefield. November 15th, 2004, the History Channel released a documentary about the battle titled Mine Creek, the Lost Battle of the Civil War.
No shit.
Don't know how it's lost, but okay.
All right, we found it. Very easy. Moving on, this is still part of this very battle. Well, this whole slew of battles and skirmishes. Battle of Marmiton River, also known as Shiloh Creek or Charlotte's Farm. 25th of October, 1864, Vernon County, Missouri. After crossing into the western Missouri on the afternoon of the 25th of October, Price's wagon train became stalled at the crossing of Marmiton River, which we just said, much as it had at the Mine Creek crossing as well. Old Price, he formed a line to protect his wagon train from the Union soldiers. The front of the line consisted of militia officer M. Jeff Thompson. M. Jeff?
M. Jeff.
Major?
Sure, no. Probably Mark.
Yeah, it's a militia officer. So yeah, very Mark.
Mark or Merriweather.
I wonder why he just said M. Just call me Jeff.
President M.J. Thompson.
Right. M. Jeff Thompson's brigade of Shelby's division, some of the remains of Major General James Fagan and Marmaduke's, commanded by Brigadier General John B. Clark Jr. after Marmaduke was captured, which had been shattered at Mine Creek, these divisions had been, and a portion of Colonel Charles H. Tyler's brigade joined as well.
Right, some of the men in Tyler's
Damn, that's some bad
brigade.
morale. You got Marmaduke's guys in there after just getting their ass beat by outnumbering
I mean,
the
you have no
Union.
choice.
Right, I guess.
Some of those men in Tyler's brigade were unarmed, because of course they were. The rest of Fagan and Clark's divisions and Tyler's brigade were aligned in a second line.
Okay.
Colonel Sidney D. Jackman's brigade was held in reserve. But you might as well just fucking bring him up.
Think that Hughes' uncle or grandpa?
No, because that guy's like British or something.
He's Australian.
Right, Australian, right. While Price's men were estimated to number around 8,000, many of these men were either too demoralized or fatigued to fight, or just were unarmed.
Right.
Estimates of how many Confederates were in true fighting condition range from 1,000 to 4,000.
Right, so it's probably 1,000. Union cavalry commanded by Brigadier General John McNeil, Lieutenant Colonel Frederick W. Benteen, they caught up to Price's makeshift line. After the arrival of Blue forces, Shelby ordered the portion of Tyler's brigade on the front line to charge. But this attack quickly repulsed by McNeil's men. Man, the Confederates just getting beat down right now. Spit on and shit. Like slapping them in their faces. The Union forces then brought up artillery in the form of 2 sections of cannons. Shelby, he used several feints to try to hold off the Union forces, but these assaults were also driven off as well.
A Union attempt to charge the Confederate line was delayed when it was discovered that the cavalry charge would block the line of fire from of the Union artillery, requiring the Union artillery to change positions.
Okay.
Once the Union attack was restarted, the Union troopers discovered that their horses were too tired to move at a gallop. Well, get off.
Right.
The Confederates still had 3 serviceable cannons remaining, but did not engage them in the fight, possibly due to a fear of the cannons being captured.
Right.
Most of the Confederate cannons had been captured at Mine Creek.
Yeah.
Might as well, man, shit.
Right. While the old Blue Coats cavalrymen were unable to reach the Confederate line because of fatigue of their horses, some of the demoralized Confederates, especially in Thompson's brigade, they're like, screw this shit. I'm out. For no reason, dude. Nah, I'm done.
Over this.
Right. Near dusk, Jackman's brigade was released from reserve and charged the Union line. Jackman's charge was able to force the 4th Iowa Cavalry to withdraw. Nightfall came, and the Confederates withdrew as well, and the fighting ended. So it was worthless and pointless and stupid.
Well, the exact losses for the Union are not known, but are reported to have been light.
Whatever that means.
The Confederates lost about 75 men, with about a third of that actually having been killed.
Okay, that'll work.
That night, Price decided to destroy any wagons, like we said, that were not essential. At this point, the Confederate Army was so shattered that historian Albert E. Casto described the force as essentially an armed mob. By then, October 26, Price's force had fallen back to Carthage, Missouri, where rations were handed out. They're like, here you go, eat. You haven't eaten in 3 days.
Right, you ain't fucking kidding. Oh, some of the old rebel soldiers had not received rations for 6 days. 28th of October, Price again defeated. This time, Second Battle of Newtonia.
Yeah, we'll have that in a couple episodes.
The old Rebs withdrew into Arkansas and were pursued into the Arkansas River. Price, he continued to retreat and what was left of his army reached Texas in early December. The landscape at the battlefield was considered to be in very good condition.
All right.
9 out of 10, right? Although you better get it,
You gotta be praised,
right,
graded.
right, and then you got to get it laminated. Although the landscape faces some threats from changes in land use.
Okay, the Civil War Sites Advisory Commission, the CWSAC, noted that the current land use at the site is similar to what it was in 1864.
Nice.
None of the site is currently protected, although the CWSAC determined that about 1,488 acres of the site could potentially be added to the National Register of Historic Places. The site is part of the Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area. So that probably still means nobody can do nothing to it.
Right.
Public interpretation features, but no visitor centers exist at this site.
We don't need a visitor center.
So there you go. That's pretty much the end of Price is Right until Natonia, but that's just formality. Just get them out of there.
This is just terrible performance by a superior in numbers.
Just one more instance of the Confederates falling apart, man.
Sad. Them repeating rifles, dude, are kicking their ass.
Well, next week we're going to Alabama for the Battle of Decatur.
Sweet home Alabama.
And that was a 3-day battle that Union troops over here are about 5,000 to 39,000.
Holy shit.
And they still had more
They still lost.
casualties. Wow.
John Hood, what are you doing, bud?
Prevented the 39,000 men of the Confederate Army of Tennessee under Hood from crossing the Tennessee River at Decatur. Wow. How do you have 5,000 men do that? Well, that's a little short battle, short information, and then we'll move to Virginia for the next two battles of Boynton Plank Road, which is not very much. Something, I don't know. We'll be back next week, though, for 4 more battles at least. All of our links in the description. Go subscribe to YouTube. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, give us a subscription or whatever you do there, and share us with your friends. Answer that Spotify question. Back next week for more battles of this American Civil War. We are the Mother Music Industry.
Bing ding.